Hi, everybody. My name is Frank Tritini, and you're with Man, an archetypal look at masculinity through movies, myths, and legends. This is our 6th episode. I want to thank you once again for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us. I know there's a lot of other things that we all could be doing, and yet for some reason you're choosing to be here. So I really appreciate that, and hope you're getting value, from it. One thing I want to Before we get into the conversation, one thing I want to ask, everybody is, if you're kind of enjoying the conversation, whether you're joining us live, or I know a lot of people are checking out the videos. We've got one man from England that just, the time is not right. So he checks out the videos the next day. Go on the Facebook page and leave a comment. There's a lot of people out there that are on the page but aren't joining the webinars. So, obviously they don't know what they're missing. And it would help. I think it would help to get some comments from you guys or women to see what you're getting out of it, and maybe start a dialogue there, and that would be great. So I want to apologize for last week. Some of you who know me know that this is a technological learning curve, putting all these things together. Working the Zoom, even though it's very easy to work, it's just sequences of stuff to do, and my head is thinking about the content, and I'm, setting up things with Jim, prior to. And last week, I forgot to hit the broadcast button. So the technology allows you to be in like a practice mode beforehand, and then you broadcast. And I hit the record button because prior weeks I forgot to hit the record button, and we were in it for about 30 seconds or so. And I was like, oh my God, I got to record. So I finally have like a production list that I go by now, and try to, keep to that. But my head is still kind of in the content, and I really wish I had someone else kind of working the board, and, maybe one day I'll get there. Last week, in the first week we talked about the archetype of the king. Second week was the warrior. Then we went to the magician, lover, and last week we introduced the hero's journey. Months ago when me and Jim started talking about this, he had an interesting angle. He said he really wanted to get into the hero's journey as it pertains to the archetypes, and I said, well, absolutely. In the development of the archetypes, and what I understood him to mean, and I thought it would be a really cool angle, was to look at the archetype itself going on its own hero's journey. I think that would be a nice, interesting slice in it. But what he kind of meant was how, the hero's journey, he looked at that as the coming together and integration of the archetypes, the 4 archetypes we're talking about, the king, warrior, magician, lover, as talked about in the book King, Warrior, Magician, Lover by Moore and Gillette. So, the integration is one thing, and then that journey is another. So we had that conversation last week, and we were by ourselves when we were having the conversation. I don't know if any of you caught it on the recording, and then we joined some people in at the about 15 minutes in. I realized what I didn't do and corrected it. And it was a good conversation, but it just got me thinking that this, that hero's journey is so rich. Joseph Campbell called it the monomyth. And, it's that one myth that can that we all have to go through, or they're all on that road somewhere. So I kind of wanted to stay with the hero's journey because it's such a good basis to look at the archetypal development and look at the journey that we're all on. So to kind of put them together, that's why we like movies. I picked The Lord of the Rings, and I've been watching it again, but I'm really watching the movie again. I've seen it so many times. Probably my favorite, definitely the trilogy is, I would say it's ranking up there in my top 3 for sure. And my wife, she never watched the trilogy. She saw the Fellowship of the Rings when it first came out in the movie theaters. And she said, would you want to watch it again? And I said, absolutely. And we just finished it 2 nights ago. just number one, Fellowship of the Ring. So we're looking forward to watching the next two. And it's been a while since I've watched it from beginning to end. You know, I've watched it a few times from beginning to end, several times, obviously. And then when I catch pieces of it on TBS or on TV or something like that, you know, I'll always sit down and watch a part, then I may walk away. And I was really intrigued by a lot of the dialogue and some of the what we might call minor scenes. And I thought, you know what, we got to come back to the hero's journey, because there was just so much about, you know, the different steps. And for those of you who aren't familiar, and I'm not terribly familiar with, you know, the steps of the hero's journey, as I said last week, the part that I really like is at the end, you know, bringing the elixir back, returning with your gifts. But the 17 steps, and I'm going to read them as that comes from Campbell's: the call to adventure, the refusal of the call, right? No, I can't do that. You know, think It's a Wonderful Life, when, no, I can't stay, I got to go. It's kind of the opposite. He wants to go on the adventure, but his real call, his real journey is to stay in Bedford Falls. You know, and that's what he's being, you know, pulled into. No, I can't do that, I got to go. So he refuses the call. Then you get some supernatural aid. You know, a magical helper appears. Crossing the first threshold, the hero leaves its known world and ventures into the unknown. The belly of the whales, the final stage of the separation from the known world. So what I want to, you know, I want to kind of take this in stages. And when I look at the archetypes, when I teach them, when I talk to people about them, it's always in the realm of helping, you know, you understand, helping me, helping you, helping anybody understand and quantify and categorize what's happening, right? I think that's the gift of the archetypes, that when we see this pattern that's developing in our lives, and we can say, hey, that reminds me of the Lord of the Rings. You know, I didn't ask for this illness. I didn't ask for this, my wife to get sick. I didn't ask to get fired. You know, I didn't ask for this, and it's here at my doorstep. You know, it's my challenge. And do I want to take it on? No, I refuse that. I don't want to do that. Yes, I'll do it. You know, so that's, I think we've all been there. Or if we haven't, if you don't think you have, I would say look a little deeper. You're probably in that stage somewhere. You might miss one of the stages in its subtlety. You know, so to be able to see your journey and break it down into the steps of the hero's journey, you can kind of see almost like what's gonna come up. Oh, I'm gonna get challenged. Oh, I'm gonna get tempted. Oh, you know, I'm gonna meet someone that's gonna give me some gifts, some unexpected gifts. You know, this is the journey that we go through, and then inside of that, you know, looking at the archetypes and how they show up. And again, looking at the Lord of the Rings, there's, you know, just so well, the characters are so well developed in their archetypal selves. And there's several heroes' journeys going on together. Frodo's on his own, and it just went out of my head. Viggo Mortensen's character, you know, he's on his own journey as well. You know, he's coming back. The last movie is Return of the King. So, you know, it's really interesting for me to be able to watch these movies through those lenses, and, you know, not only be thoroughly entertained by the acting and the adventure, and, you know, just the storyline and the nuances, and to watch Lord of the Rings and see all, you know, just see the beauty in the landscape that's New Zealand, and being transported, you know, to transport your soul to a different place. It's wonderful. I mean, that's why we go to the movies, and to have that experience and to share those experiences, and you know, be moved. You know, a good movie is one that moves us, right? Maybe that's why they call it movies, because they move us. If they're not, that should be, you know, shelvies. They're the ones that stay on the shelves. So why do they move you? Because there's a resonance. Why does a movie move me? It's because there's a resonance with some energy inside of me, and I believe that's the archetypal energy that we talk about. And if we can delineate, I found for myself, if I can delineate that thing inside of me and put a language around it, I'm better equipped to make choices when I realize I'm in the movie of my life, the story of my life. Years ago, they didn't have movies. They had books. Before they had books, they told stories. And this has been going on for years. And in some cultures, they just dance. It's an expression of what was, what is, and what will be in the overall human experience, right? Inside of that, we then have our own, free will, and to make the choices, that we want, to make our choices, our individual choices. And, my teacher, Carolyn, and one of the biggest things I took away from studying with her at CMed, I'm talking about Dr. Carolyn Mace, it was that most people live the unconscious life. And being unconscious doesn't mean not knowing what's going on around you. It doesn't mean you're not successful. It might not even mean you're not happy, right? You can be happy and unconscious. Ignorance is bliss. But it's still an unconscious life where you're not making the choices for yourself. Things might happen to you, and there could be good things. People can win the lottery, and they can still live a very unconscious life and a very good life. But for me, once you go on the journey of consciousness and go on the journey of awareness and, dare I say, enlightenment, never do I want to be enlightened, but on that path of enlightenment, you can't become unconscious. It's like the Matrix when you take the pill. It's like you take, and I always get these confused, red pill, blue pill, but you take the blue pill, you go back, you take the red pill and things will never be the same. You can't go back. So that's the choice, I believe, when we say, yes, I'm on this journey of consciousness, personal development consciousness. You've taken that pill, you can't go back. Sorry. And it's not easy. It's tough. So why not get some tools like the archetypes that will help us on the journey? And the difference then becomes, living your fate, that which was written somewhere, if you believe that, or, the fate, or fulfilling your destiny. And what sounds better or what's more inspiring, fulfilling your destiny is definitely that's what I'm fated for. So, and that's why I wanted to start this webcast, this webinar, this seminar, workshop, whatever we're calling it, and bring the knowledge of the archetypes and how we apply them, how I apply them, and how other people apply them that I know. Jim is not going to be on with us tonight. He jumped on us very early, and he's got an infection, and the doctor gave him some medication, and it's making him a little loopy, so he has to be excused. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to got a few people in the audience. I don't think there's any questions yet. I want to kind of, open it up because we went through some stuff last week and we were doing the hero's journey as well. So I just want to see who, there it is. If you can raise your hand if you want to be promoted to a panelist. I know one man we have is traveling. So there's a way to raise the hand. Got John Squarey. Hello, John. You're being promoted. There he is. We've got Howard Spira with us. Jim Ellis from the West Coast. John, are you on mute or are you just silent there? I can't hear you, so your microphone might be off, John.
How's that, Frank?
That's better.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here. I was up in Michigan last week fishing.
Oh, nice. Hold on, let me promote Howard. And who else has a hand up? Anyone else have a hand up? No one else has a hand up yet. Hey, Howard, how you doing? You're on mute. Let me take you off mute there. There we go. We got Rick Segreto. Now you're off mute.
Okay. All right.
But I can't hear you, so I don't know if you might have to adjust your volume, Howard.
All right. Can you hear me now?
A little better, yeah.
All right. I'll just turn it up.
And there's Rick from Ecuador. How you doing, Rick?
I'm fine.
Great. So I don't know if you remember, we're present during the intro, but we're just taking a walk down the hero's journey, and I've just been really intrigued, from starting this project with Jim and taking it through and looking at the hero's journey. I've always thought it was a great roadmap, for us as individuals, and obviously, I think most movies that have or display the stages of a hero's journey do really well. At least there's a solid storyline that everyone's kind of attracted to. And I actually, in doing some research, I read that a Disney executive passed a memo to somebody. It says, this is the elements of a successful story. And it was like 12 out of Campbell's 17 steps of a hero's journey, in the same succession. So it's definitely something that's super present in our culture, super present in our pop culture, and I believe present. More importantly, I think it's present in our lives. Personally, I've had a couple of challenges. One of the clips I put in a Facebook post, was Frodo looking at the ring. Matter of fact, rather than do that, I can pull that up. I was looking at the ring and like, I don't want this. And well, rather than do it, I'm gonna show the clip. It's a short clip, but decide what to do. What must I do? There it is. Hold on. No. Decide where are you, Zoom? Share and go.
I wish the ring had never come to me. I wish none of this had happened.
So do all who live to see such times, but that is not for them to decide. All you have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to you.
Yeah, so I just think that's that hits me when I see it, because there's been several things in my life that I didn't choose, and I guess there was a part of me saying I wish it never happened. And the wizard's Gandalf said words to him is, few people ask for these things, but all you have is to decide what to do. And as I shared a few weeks back when we were talking about the warrior, when my first wife had a stroke, and I think I was 35, she was 36, or 30. I think she was 36, and she woke up at 2:00 in the morning. I got a phone call at 2:00 in the morning to come into work, and she woke up to go to the bathroom and fell down. She had a stroke, and she was left paralyzed on our left side. We had a 2-year-old at the time and a newborn in the NICU, 5 weeks old, that was struggling for his life. And, you know, that's certainly something that I wouldn't have chosen. And, you know, I went through, it was like all I really can do now is decide what to do. And that's what got me through, you know, doing what I had to do during that time, whether I liked it or not. So I really like that part. You know, for me, it speaks to me about, you know, stuff like that happening in my life. And to realize that I'm not alone with it through, you know, the countless stories that are out there is great, because these people aren't writing these stories. These box office hits aren't being, you know, raking in millions in dollars. Books aren't selling off the shelves with this wonderful story if it wasn't resonating with, you know, many people. So it's, you know, somewhat comforting to know that I'm not the only person going through this ordeal. You know, it might be it's my ordeal, it's my journey, but there's other people that are going through their own. And for me, that's a very strangely comforting thought, but it is comforting at the same time. So I feel like I'm talking to myself, and although I can go on and on, I really would love some interaction. If those people that are out there, Sylvia, Patrick, Jim, panelists, just let me know, and I'll pull you up. But for now, what do you think, John?
I was just trying to refresh some of the concepts in Thomas or Joseph Campbell's The Hero with 1,000 Faces. And, you know, Frank, I mean, I think where you began tonight in respect to trying to break open all these archetypal insights as it relates to a hero's journey. And I think that one of the things that, and I just brought it up in an old bookmark, but there's a tremendous amount of influence that the work has had in art, whether it's in the context of what we've been doing, using movies as a way to amplify some of this. But there's a quote from Campbell, and I'm just going to throw this out there. Artist, and I'm sharing this in the context of the art as it relates to the movies that we've been discussing. And anyway, but artists are magical helpers, evoking symbols and motifs that connect us to our deeper selves. They can help us along the heroic journey of our own lives. The artist is meant to put the objects of the world together in such a way that through them you will experience that light, that radiance which is the light of our consciousness, and which all things both hide and, when properly looked upon, reveal. The hero journey is one of the universal patterns which that radiance shows brightly. What I think is that a good life is one hero journey after another, over and over again. You are called to the realm of adventure. You are called to new horizons. Each time there is the same problem. Do I dare? And then if you do dare, of course, the dangers are there, and the help also, and the fulfillment or the fiasco. There's always the possibility of a fiasco, but there's also the possibility of bliss. End quote.
Yeah. So what's if you can give us one of your hero's journeys, John. What was the adventure that you were called to that you weren't looking forward to? It's one thing about going for the adventure, right? We're not talking about we're not talking about going off on something we want to do. This is the hero's journey is something that there's a call to us, and like bungee jumping or jumping out of an airplane. It's like, hey, let's do it. Oh shit, no, I ain't doing that. So I think there needs to be, for it to be a true hero's journey, it needs to be like a refusal of it.
Let me share this with you. From last week, I spent a good amount of time on Torch Lake fishing, and it's a deep lake. It's about 20 miles long and a couple miles wide. It's a lake that was formed by a couple of glacial periods, and I thought of the book and the movie. Spencer Tracy starred in it, The Old Man and the Sea. And I think oftentimes, maybe in modern culture, we sometimes assume that the hero's journey has some great epic result. And oftentimes, the hero's journey really is a very humbling experience that brings out a truth and certain depths of beauty that we carry around within us that maybe we don't recognize or evoke in our daily hustle and bustle lives. But I had a day and a half of not a lot of success out in the lake and trying a lot of bait and lures, and I got this monster on my line, and I'm in a little Chris Craft, and I just had the trolling motor on, and I'm being tugged, okay? And so I think I had about a 12-pound test line on, and I probably was under-equipped for what was on the hook. I had it about 40 feet down, and I just, it didn't last long. About 10 minutes later, I was fighting him, and the line just went limp, lost him. But it brought me to a book that I read as a kid in grade school and reread a number of times. And here's an old fisherman, kind of broken down. He doesn't have many adventures left in front of him, and he's not in a fishing community. His respect and his integrity have diminished over time, and as you know, the end of the story, he does make it back, but only with the carcass of the great fish that he caught, right?
Yeah. You wish you were so lucky.
Yeah. Yeah. I did catch a few lake trout later on, though. But, the irony in the hero's journey is that the prize sometimes is not what we would necessarily imagine it to be or expect it to be. He was so disappointed that after all of that heroic battle that he had with the fish, and then of course trying to preserve the catch and beat off all the sharks that were attacking it, and of course he failed to do that. The end result, he shows up in the port with just this torn up carcass of this great fish, but it was enough, even the fragments of that journey was enough to validate him as a man.
Right.
And of course, Hemingway, the storytelling, I think in that book is maybe some of his best work. Perhaps that's my own personal bias, but I think that a lot of times, if I were a younger man, and I was becoming familiar with what a hero's journey might be, I probably would have much different expectations about what I would expect the outcome to be.
Sure.
And so I have my wife, her son. He's a 20-something who's struggling like a lot of 20-somethings are right now. Has a very strong warrior presence about him. He wrestled in college. In fact, his senior year, he was ranked nationally in the top 10. But facing his adult challenges, okay, is a lot different in some respects than just being able to go out on a mat and solve the issue, up or down, win or lose. And I'm trying to imagine, Frank, that maybe in some ways, some of the byproduct of this work is how do us older guys, become wise elders? Okay, there's a lot of elderly people. Okay, but as older men in our second half of life, what do we have? What do we have to help illuminate? People, and we've all been there in our first half of life. What do we have to take from this work that would be beneficial?
Well, what you're talking about, John, not to cut you off, but
I'm just trying to start a conversation.
Yeah, no, that's great, and it's wonderful because part of this, I think if for me, going through what I've been through in my life, having the education around the archetypes and the interest to that I applied it to my life, and to get the benefits of it. I'm very passionate about bringing it out there in the world. And, for men of my age, 50 that are still struggling, but absolutely, for the younger generation. If you look at, Iron John, another favorite book of mine, and, I think it's seminal work. If you're going to do any kind of work with men, you have to read Iron John. It's, Bly's representation of it, other than just the story at the end is that the poem is great, but when Bly goes through it, he really breaks it down and says that each man needs two fathers, his biological father and his second father. What you're describing is that mentor. The question that you're asking, what I hear is how do we become mentors? How do men of a certain age, and I would go anywhere between 35 and up. I think 35, it might be a little young, but it could be a way to begin the process for sure. When I was at that age, I started teaching martial arts. I was learning the martial arts and I started teaching the martial arts. So, you can start coaching basketball. You can learn the skills how to communicate things to other men. So that when we come to these, crossroads in life, younger men can look up to us and we can walk them through it. We can give them the, if you think who is that person that is always there, it's it's usually that intuitive side. If you look in the hero's journey, it's the the goddess gives some gifts. There's supernatural aid. It's supernatural. So it's on the realm of the magician. There's always that magician that is kind of playing mentor to the prince becoming a king. And that's kind of the hero's journey too. If you're looking at the prince becoming the king, if you have a
I certainly agree. I mean, I just think that part of the hero's journey too is overcoming shadowy mentors. And while I think, I mean, we mentor those younger than us, and we learn from our mistakes. It's good. It's mindful to step. If you're going to choose to step into the role of an elder, a wise elder, to do so with no conditions, because I have met people who regard themselves as elders and are are very aggressively invested in wanting to be recognized. And I think that can be very damaging to the young. If
oh, sure. And again, even for the young, I mean, if they learn to see archetypically, you can tell when the magician is working in the shadow. We can look at Oliver, Fagin in Oliver. He's the shadow. He's totally, he's providing, he's putting a roof over those kids' head, but he's not taking care of it. He's doing it totally for his own gain. Totally, literally line his pockets.
You think of a Slumdog Millionaire. Now, that's a great hero's journey movie.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy who's exploiting all those street urchins, pouring acid into their eyes and such that they could go blind, so they'll be more sympathetic. They'll provoke more sympathy from foreign tourists and get more coins and such. And
Yeah, so if we can recognize, again, I think that's what I love about the archetypes, because if you know what to look for, you know what to listen for. A lot of times in my work, I listen to where someone comes from. I was taught to listen to the words and read the metaphors in people's descriptions, and through that, that's coming from a certain energy, that's coming from a certain perspective, and that's usually the archetype where they're coming from, unless they're really good and they're like double backing in their tracks. And that's out there too, and that's what you call a con man, right? That's what you call a con man. They got so many layers that you can't really see through. You can't discern the truth. But all of this plays out. And John, what you had talked about is seeing this younger man on his hero's journey, and how can we help. And I think knowing the hero's journey is a good way to do that, because you can kind of say, okay, where's he at? Let's see, what step on his path is he? Where is he? Oh, he's in the road of trials right now. The hero must pass the series of tests to begin transformation. So my son is probably there right now. My son's 21, and he's probably in that stage.
So this is how it goes, Frank. You got to tell the kid. You got to know when to hold them. You got to know when to fold them. You got to know when to walk away. Know when to run. You never count your money.
Yeah. Exactly, right? I mean, the lessons are so simple sometimes, and what I had to learn for myself with my son is I can't teach him everything. He's got to go through it himself, and to know that that's where he is in his journey, and to be able to confidently step back and allow him to go through his own trials is not easy as a parent, and is necessary as a father, and is necessary as a man.
So, Frank, think of some movies. Okay, just take that recent conversation right there, and think of some movies that would convey that story. Okay.
Well, I just named one, Slumdog Millionaire.
Yeah, that's That's an extraordinary movie. I was thinking of an old classic, East of Eden.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I mean, it's been adapted twice, but that's a beautiful movie. The one with James Dean,
Yeah,
directed. Yeah.
yeah. And I don't know that this is a little bit more of a complicated story, but I was always interested in perhaps if Jim Curtin could kind of relate Catcher in the Rye, Holden's the character. I mean, just how he would possibly walk through that story and expose archetypally, what's going on.
Yeah, ironic. It's an ironic reference because as you remember, Holden Caulfield hates movies. He says so.
Right.
In the first page of the book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's an interesting insight.
Mm-hmm.
I named my son Holden.
Seriously, really?
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite books ever.
Yeah, me too.
And, yeah, I mean, I love Salinger except for that book, but anyhow. I'm trying to think of a movie. What I'm thinking of actually is a great novel, which has been adapted twice into film. It's Lord Jim by Joseph Conrad. And it's a fascinating, it's a great, and right to me, deeply moving hero's journey story because it's about a guy who has to learn to, when I'm talking about something I just broached, disassociate the becoming a hero from having an ego about it. And it starts off with this Lord Jim, this young man who is enamored of the glamour of becoming, joining the Navy or getting on a merchant ship and experiencing a life of adventure. And he's put in charge of a ship that is carrying Muslim passengers on a journey to Mecca. And during a thunderstorm, during a storm at sea, he's convinced that the ship is going to sink, and he actually thinks and he actually jumps he behaves like a total coward, and he actually gets on a smaller boat, the next morning, I mean, the ship ends up. By the remaining crew end up carrying the ship off to Saudi Arabia, to Mecca, but he's branded as a coward, and he has to travel across the world because everywhere he goes, eventually his reputation catches up with him for his act of cowardice of abandoning the ship and abandoning his passengers. Eventually, though, he settles off into the South Seas and gets accepted by a tribe. And when the representatives of Western colonial exploitation show up to wage war on the people and the inhabitants of this tribe, of this island, he voluntarily chooses to sacrifice his life, and he finally becomes the hero that he always dreamed of. But he doesn't. But without any ego, and he does so by sacrificing his life, and he's not in the position then just to kind of wallow in contemplative glory about his greatness afterwards.
Wow, that's pretty powerful. What's the name of that movie, Rick?
The book is called Lord Jim by Joseph Conrad. It was adapted with Peter O'Toole.
Yeah.
So we've got a few more minutes here, and I don't know if there's a couple other people that are on the feed. Sylvia, Patrick, Jim, and I. If you'd like me to promote you, a panelist, just raise your hand. You can join the conversation. I don't know if you heard me say that. Howard, you're very quiet tonight.
I'm just listening because I'm kind of. I actually disagree with what you said about age making a difference for a mentor. Yeah. Think about the movie Stand By Me. The River Phoenix character. Essentially, he's a father figure for the other three kids. It's more just a sense of experience. I mean, because look, guys our age who, quite frankly, are still clueless
Right.
because they haven't gone through, the important rituals that a man needs to go through to kind of be fully in his masculinity. They haven't been blessed by the feminine. They haven't had that great challenge. They haven't had the question and answer for them, am I good enough? And so they're really not ready to take on the mantle of an elder. And sometimes you have kids, 16, 17-year-old kids who have gone through all that and can take on the mantle of an elder. It's not about age. It's really about life experience.
I would agree with you 100%. I mean, you're familiar with the play King Lear by Shakespeare?
Yeah.
It's exactly what the theme of that story. I mean, at one point, Shakespeare's fool, King Lear's fool says, I would have thee beaten for thou having gotten old without gotten wise. And it is about a king, who is basically a spoiled brat who is forced to grow up, shortly before he dies.
Yeah, and what I guess I was referencing myself and just kind of, with the age thing, and I absolutely agree with both you men are saying. What I was kind of looking at is when John said, that we should look to become how do we look to become mentors to these younger men? So specifically, it's, I know now that I got a couple of gray hairs, younger men can kind of look up to us a little bit more. It's a little bit easier sometimes if I've gone down the road, from a healing perspective. I always fall on the thing that you can only take someone as far as you've gone yourself. Right. And if I haven't gone through the experience, how do I mentor someone through it? You can't, and yes, sometimes someone younger has been through it and can mentor us. I don't know if they mentor is the right. Can we learn from them? Absolutely. But taking on the role of a mentor, it's, for me, it's that there's a distance to it. There's a knowing of, when to give an answer, when to ask a question, when to give a challenge, when to take a step back. There's such a dance, I think, that goes on when you really for me at least, when I step into mentor someone or actively coach someone.
Yeah, well, for one thing, the person in question has to desire, what you're offering.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's another thing with mentorship, it's different. I do a lot of coaching in my business, and mentorship is different. When I'm a coach, it's my responsibility. Someone has hired me to help them, either them or a company. And it's my responsibility to reach out. It's my responsibility to call. It's, my responsibility to generate the conversation, and that's as a coach. As a mentor, it's not. That's how I hold it. As a mentor, it's completely different. I am here for you when you desire me. So I'm a resource. But a lot of times what we see in these movies are people join together. We saw it in that one clip where the Fellowship of the Ring was formed. And, Frodo stepped up and said, I will take the ring. And you saw right then Gandalf kind of like, yeah, you shouldn't have to do this. This is not what I want. This is not what I wanted for him. But he was the first to step up to say, I will help you. And then everyone else kind of stayed up. And then he gave him a little wink, like, hey, it worked. It's coming together. And then other people kind of stepped up.
But it's always like that. You think about point teams, right? It's always like the least qualified, least ready man who steps forward to take the lead, because all the guys who have the wisdom don't want it because they know what they're about to step in.
Yeah.
You need that guy to step forward. And, that's why I'm a big fan of leading from the back and not being the first guy to step forward and say, okay, follow me. You let somebody else take the lead, and I can kind of, guide them a little bit from the back of the room. But if I'm in the front of the room, I think I lose a lot of my power because I've already taken that step forward.
Right. Right. And I know you really, you're a man that really likes the role of being a mentor.
Oh, I hate it. No.
You hate it?
My hero's journey is embracing the fact that I'm an elder. I hate that notion. I'm good at it, but I hate it. I mean, I just.
I hate it too, by the way.
What, being a mentor?
No, the notion of being an elder.
Yeah, no, I'm not talking about being an elder. Being an elder, you got to be old. You know, it kind of goes with it.
Yeah, I kind of refuse to be old. So,
you know, Peter Pan.
That's the right disposition. Hey, Frank, here's a quote from Richard Rohr.
Yeah.
And what context that this may be most appropriate in, I guess you could leave it up to any of us to apply it, but it was a quote that simply stated, in the spiritual journey, one can't see what you haven't been shown what to look for. You could substitute how to look for. And is that something that you think fits part of the role of a mentor?
Oh, you know, absolutely. And it's that, you know, for me, that speaks to the light magician, the mature magician.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to ask questions to get someone to uncover and go searching for themselves. Because, you know, what I found in my practice, and if you tell someone you have to do this because this is going to happen, right away, you know, it's like, no, that's not going to happen to me. You know, the ego kicks in for that person a lot of times, especially with men. Right? When you tell the worst way you can almost, I don't know if it's the exact worst, maybe Howard's been doing work with men a little longer than I have. You know, but maybe one of the worst ways to tell a man what to do or help a man do, tell him what he has to do.
Yep.
Yeah, because then you become nagging old dad.
Yeah.
There's almost an immediate ego reaction, you know, when you're under stress. Now, if you get that person that becomes willingly and he says, you know what, I just don't know what to do, you know, well, try this. You know, I've done that before when in a role of a coach.
Yeah.
Just take this one step.
Or have you thought of
Frank, the quote was not intended as an imperative. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a presence of mind that requires discernment, discretion, and intuition as to how to provide that guidance.
Yeah.
You know, it's not something that you can just deliver with a hammer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of language, and I know when men tell me they need to do something, I tell them they need to stop saying that. It's not about what you need to do; it's about what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's the same thing with telling people what to do. Is you always ask them, "Have you thought about trying this?" And I'm very, very reluctant to tell them. So if asking questions is a mentor, then I like being a mentor.
Yeah. That's what I mean.
There you go.
I personally just don't like anybody telling me I should do this or I should do that. It's kind of like the same way that I don't like complete strangers approaching me and telling me you need to accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior.
Yes, it goes on that, you know, immediately something, there's a visceral reaction, right? You get that visceral reaction, like, who are you to tell me? And that's how I get, you know, that there's, and even if I really respect somebody, I would say the only time that I've been comfortable with that is when there's really a clear-cut distinction between a teacher and a student. Like when I've been on the mat with the martial arts, you know, when I say, hey, I want to get better. What do I need to do? And they'll give me the next step because I can't see what the next step is. I don't know what the next step is, but they're ahead of me, so they know what the next step is. So, you know, sometimes I want to know where the path. It's more like, you know, not what to do, it's which path do I go down. And then once I'm on it, I still have choices to make. You know, I still have decisions to make. I still have actions that I have to put. I still have things I have to do. No one else can do it for me. And I think as a mentor, we can all help those looking for mentor with some direction. Just show them the path. You know, maybe give them a little, hey, guess what? I've been down this path before. A couple of people I know have been down this path before. Maybe you want to look out for X, Y, and Z. You know, that's something that I've done before, and it's been very helpful because the person doesn't shrink back. You know, and you give them a little bit of a heads up. They don't know how to deal with the dragon. They don't know how to defeat the dragon, but say, hey, be mindful. There's a dragon out there. And I know there's a dragon out there because last time I walked down this path, there was a dragon down there. And the two other guys that I know that walked down the path, they saw the dragon too. So you're going down this path, you're going to see a dragon. Right? Like, that's not telling you how to defeat the dragon. That's not taking the fish off the, the hook. John, it's leaving you with, the fish on the hook in the metaphor that you took before. You still have to hook the fish. You still have to slay the dragon. I don't think there's any sin or anything wrong personally with advising someone, because they may not take your advice anyway. You know, if they walk down that path like a fool, not looking out for the dragon, then they'll get slayed. The dragon will slay them. And one of the metaphors I use for life is like a video game. You know, we, start in the video game in the first chakra, if you will, that first level. And, we have our skills, we have our limited skills, and we learn the game there. And then we rise to the next level. And we have the same skills, but it's a little bit faster. There's different challenges, and there's different weapons, there's different treasures, there's different gifts, and then you learn that level. But immediately when you go to that level, you're incompetent, so you get killed faster. It's that
kind of reminds me of that movie Groundhog Day, where Bill Murray relive the same day over and over again, and each day he screws up, he learns something, and then he applies the lessons he learned from his last re-experience of that day to the next day. And then he learns some new lessons, and then he keeps on reliving that day until, and each time he does, he grows a little bit more. He becomes less arrogant, more humble, more aware of his life's purpose.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually a great metaphorical movie to seeing your own, walking down the same path, seeing your hero's journey, your own hero's journey, if you will, and seeing it and saying, oh, shoot, yesterday I went left and there was one scene where he kept on getting splashed with the water, and then he realizes that, and then he doesn't go that way, and he waits. I think he waits, right? In the water, the car comes by and he doesn't get splashed. He says, oh, I'm getting the hang of this.
And there's also a very moving scene where repeatedly he tries to save the life of that alcoholic, that street, and he keeps on trying each day, different strategy, and finally the nurse has to tell him that sometimes people are just going to die.
Yeah.
And so that means he had to kind of come to accept the fact that some people do in fact leave him.
Life's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the, that's a great example to look at, how we can use this work actually, and how I like to use this work in my life to be able to see, see the pattern that's happening. And it's Groundhog Day is great in the movies, right, Chris? It's the same thing. It's the same movie. It's the same script. It's the same. Everything is the same. And the only thing that becomes different is his actions.
Mm-hmm.
But everything else is the same. And it's his actions, his choices change, things around him change. Yep. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. That's where I believe the archetypes are so powerful, to be so powerful in your life. Because if you can recognize the patterns that are happening and the patterns that have happened in your life, then you get to make a different choice.
It's funny. It's funny that that movie has taken on an archetypal resonance. It was kind of a moderate critical success and a moderate box office success, but then on cable and video and people have rediscovered it over the last 20 years, and now the phrase Groundhog Day actually now refers to as being like feeling like you're trapped in a certain situation, over and over again.
Yeah. One of the things, I used archetypes in my life. I'm married to my wife, Sarah, now for 8 years. We have 3 children. It's my second marriage. And we met 13 plus years ago. And I was learning about the archetypes. And what I had just learned, just about the time I met Sarah, I learned that I had a knight archetype. And, think about the knight gets involved with the damsel. But the knight doesn't marry the damsel. And the knight certainly doesn't marry the princess. The knight may fool around with the princess, a la Lancelot. And the princess may desire the knight, but they're not coming together. So what I realized in my life, I had this pattern of being the knight, wanting to be the knight, and seeing a damsel and riding up on my horse, my metaphorical horse, rescuing the damsel, her being very appreciative, me being, filled up with that, that feeling of taking care of someone in the moment, very appealing to the ego, but even done for the right thing, fulfilling in a lot of different ways. And a lot of times that would lead to a relationship, right? In the relationship I had, there was definitely that knight damsel thing that would go on. And what would happen was in these relationships, the knight damsel, it just keeps feeding itself. So I'm always doing the rescuing, and she's always a damsel. And after a while, what I would say is, it gets tired. My horse got tired of riding up to the rescue, right? So for a man, I would get resentful and say, I don't need this anymore. I saved you 100 times. Come on, get with it. Stop playing this game. That's how it manifested in the relationship, and the relationship would end. Would come to an end. And I had this realization at one of the weekends when I was training with Carolyn. We would go out to Chicago and train with her for a weekend. I think it was 3 times a year for 3 years. And I had just kind of come back, and I had this realization during one of those workshops. And I'm in a new relationship with Sarah, and she comes it's like Tuesday. I'm back on the Sunday night, and it's Tuesday. I see her, and she comes to me and she says, I need your help with something. Will you, fill in the blank? And I said, sorry, I can't do that. And it was something I could absolutely 100% could have done. If I did it, I would have been a hero. And I would have gotten the benefits of being the hero. I'm not talking about the hero's journey. I would have been the hero in the moment, the savior. And I said, no, I can't do it. And the look on her face, she was taken aback. She was disappointed in the moment. And then I explained to her why, and she said, I'm not the damsel, and turned around and walked away. And I was like, and I thought to myself, well, good. But she got kind of resentful from it. And here it is, 13 years later, we're still together. We're married, and we have 3 beautiful children together. And I firmly believe, like I know in my heart of hearts and everything, that if I would have helped her with that issue, it would have put in play the damsel knight relationship. And my horse would have said, are we really going to do this again? And I'm sure the relationship would have fallen apart. Why am I sure? Because every other relationship that I had in my past that started with the knight damsel that was present, ended. I'm not saying it ended badly, but it all ended just because I didn't want it anymore. don't want to be that guy anymore. I like doing it. I still like doing it. I still like doing it. Always like doing it, but it doesn't work in a long-term love relationship. It's not going to work with me, and that's why I love the archetypes, because when I saw it happening, it was like, I see it, and I'm not going to do it again. And I said no, and it was beautiful. If you haven't seen this film, Frank, I recommend it. It's classic Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo, where Jimmy Stewart is a detective currently, who's on leave because he suffered kind of psychological distress when one of his partners died, and he rescues, and he's given a job to shadow this beautiful, mysterious woman who has suicidal inclinations.
Kim Novak.
Kim Novak, and at one point, Kim Novak, playing two roles, throws herself into the San Francisco Bay. He jumps in after her, he rescues her, and that's what brings about this romantic obsession with her. And the film is kind of a classic meditation on being seduced by the illusion of playing this knight in shining armor, and how that can kind of sort of screw up your head. Yeah. And that's a lot of what we talked about when I studied the archetypes. Was one of the classics that just to move away from the king, warrior, magician, lover, the victim rescuer. You can think of so many of us can either see it in our own relationships, or it's a lot easier to see it in relationships of others, where that victim rescuer relationship happens, and we know it's going to be failed. And the idea behind that is, someone's in a hole, and you come over and you reach down, you throw a rope down, you pull the person out, and you get them just to the edge, and their fingers are on the edge of the hole, and you say, okay, you're good, and you walk away, and you really hope in the dysfunctional pattern, you hope they fall back in, because if they fall back in, then they're going to need you, and then you have something to do. And that's dysfunction as the rescuer. Dysfunction as the victim would be, you get saved, you get there like that, and just as you can pull yourself out, but you let go and you go back in, because if I'm out, then there's going to be no need, there's going to be no relationship with that person. So if I fall back in, I'll call and he'll come, or she'll come again. So that victim rescuer dysfunctional pattern in relationships is something that is prevalent. I saw your relationship, stop it. I saw a very funny TV commercial. I don't know what product, but it involved Lassie finally giving up on trying to rescue Timmy and everybody else, because he was always in that, because she was always in that role, and finally Lassie just kind of gives up and runs away. Yeah, and the script changes and the dialogue changes. So. And again, they're funny. We can laugh at them, Rick, but there's wisdom in that, because it's kind of, your life can be, I believe that the archetypes can really help. They help me in that way. I think they can help everyone in that way. Really make choices of my actions right here in the moment. If I recognize what scene of the movie, of my movie I'm in right now, and do I want to say that line, or do I want to say something different? So I loved your addition there about Groundhog Day, because that's what it is. That's what our lives are, especially when we're talking about archetypal patterns that we get into. If you ever woke up and you say, I can't believe it's happened again, don't blame the thing that's happened, and blame your choices. That's where they lie. The situation is a situation, but your choices can be different. And if you make different choices, you may have a different life. But Frank, what would Superman do if he didn't have anybody to rescue? I mean, there would be peace.
I think he'd spend a lot of time
on earth and goodwill towards men. I mean, there would be a different story.
Probably be spending a little more time with Lois.
Yeah. Well, man, it's been and ladies, Sylvia is still with us, so I want to bid you a fond adieu. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. It's been great, and look forward to seeing you next time. Good night, all.
Good night, Frank. Good night, guys.
Until next week.